Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to The 3-Month Vacation. Since last Friday, I've been doing something quite unusual. I've been standing in front of the mirror when I'm brushing my teeth. You'd say, well, that's not so unusual, is it? But I'm not standing on both legs, but on a single leg at a time. Now, why would I do that? The reason why I started to do this weird activity is because I watched a video about balance. It said that people start losing their balance around the age of 30. That took me by surprise. I always assumed that much older people lost their balance over time and then needed some kind of walker or walking stick to stay upright. It's fair enough to say that as you age, you're not going to have as many balance problems as most older people do. You've just got some information. Is it just information or is it an overload? How do we use information? Why does it cause so much of an overload? Why is it that we can never keep up with it? One of the primary reasons is because we're always trying to implement. We're always trying to stand on one leg. In today's episode, we're going to look at 3 buckets of information. And I promise you, if you follow this advice, the information overload won't disappear tomorrow, but by next week or the next month, you will feel completely at peace with all kinds of information. Let's start out with the 3 buckets of information. And it's not like I'm telling you something that you don't know about, but hear me out. The first bucket of information is knowledge. The second is entertainment. And the third is implementation. Just knowing about these 3 things isn't going to help you. But how you put that information in the separate buckets, that's really going to change the way you look at almost any information. Let's start out with the first one, which is knowledge. I was listening to an interview where singer-songwriter Paul McCartney was talking about how they came about the song Obladi Oblada. The Beatles were in Rishikesh, India, doing meditation with Maharishi. And then after meditation, they used to go to the clubs late at night, drink, dance, food. And it was on one of those nights in one of those clubs that Paul McCartney ran into this African guy. And as they were talking and dancing, this guy would often say, Obladi, oblada, life goes on, brah. And McCartney thought, this is a really good theme for a song. So he started to write the lyrics as well as the music. But that's when they got stuck. The 3 of them, George, Paul, and Ringo, sat down and tried to create that opening sound, and they just couldn't get it going. And then John Lennon shows up. As McCartney tells the story, we were not getting anywhere with it. Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Nothing was happening. And John Lennon walks in and says, hey guys, what's up? And they tell him about Obladi Oblada. And he goes, oh, that one. He sits down at the piano and he turns out that opening piece that goes dun 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 dun. And of course, they all fall back and go, yes. Now that was a lovely story, wasn't it? But notice how you automatically allocated it to a bucket. You didn't go, oh, wait, I have to make notes. I have to write that down. You listened to it and then you put it somewhere in your memory, but you didn't want to do anything with it. It's the same kind of thing that you do with the weather report. You might sit through an entire weather report and go, that's cool, and do nothing with it. Because nothing is happening. It's not 40 degrees centigrade out there. It's not boiling hot, or it's not freezing cold, or there's no thunderstorm on the horizon. So there's nothing to implement. So you just put it down as a fact, as something that you know. And when you read a book, and it has all of this information, chapter 1, chapter 6, chapter 17, and you're thinking, I have to make notes. No, you don't have to make notes. You might want to make notes as a hobby or because it slows you down and you're savoring the book, you're savoring the information. But in general, you don't have to remember all of those things. Remembering is all part of what we did at school. As little kids, it was drilled into us that we had to go to school, we had to memorize everything, and then we had to spit it out in some examination. And that's why we're always trying to remember things. At one point, I used to make copious notes of everything. But now when I'm reading a book, it's just knowledge. I'm not going to do anything with it. If you're not going to do anything with it, you really don't care. We get all kinds of information of this nature and probably go through thousands of pieces of data in every single month. Knowledge is just keeping you abreast of what's happening, things that you're doing right, possibly things you're doing wrong. You don't have to do anything with it. You just have to know that it's there. And that's the first bucket. And you already knew that. Most of the information that you and I have, we put in the bucket automatically. It's only when it pertains to our business that we think, oh, we somehow have to retain this information. And we don't. So that's the first step. Just put everything into the knowledge bucket. We then have the second bucket, namely entertainment. I don't have to tell you what to do with this. You watch Netflix, that's entertainment. You don't make any notes. You watch comedy on YouTube, that's entertainment. You read a novel, you hear a joke, that's all entertainment. You don't feel the need to file away everything in these 3-ring binders or in some massive cloud backup somewhere. You laugh, you entertain yourself, and you move on. And that's the simplest bucket of all, the entertainment bucket. So now we have 2 buckets, the knowledge bucket and the entertainment bucket. You know what's coming next, right? You do. It's the implementation bucket. And this is the reason why I stand on one foot while brushing my teeth. In fact, as I'm recording this podcast, I'm still standing on one foot. The video suggested that I put on my socks while standing on one foot. And while it's not a very complex activity, it's something that I could implement. If you were to treat all the information that you got in a day, a week, or a month, it could be like a pizza, and you'd have slices. And if you watch endless comedy like I do on YouTube, then one huge slice goes to entertainment. And since you're listening to this podcast, you're probably reading books, listening to audiobooks, which means you're getting a lot of information that you need for your life and your business. And you feel somehow that you have to sit down and you have to write it all down or somehow back it up. And you don't have to do that. Let me give you an example. About 10 years ago, I read a book which talked about onboarding. Onboarding is when someone joins your organization, and usually what happens is that they're given a desk, they're given a big folder, and they have to go through the information. And you would think that the opposite would happen. They would be given a warm welcome, they would be shown around the place in great detail, they would be made comfortable. That whole zone that they're entering would have been made into a safe zone. But that's not what happens in most places. That's not what happens on membership sites. And we have a membership site at 5000 BC. And as I read through this first chapter of the book, I had no idea what I was getting into. I got to page 15 or maybe page 20, and I realized I have to backtrack. I have to make notes. I found myself on page 1 and I started to write down all of these details. But it wasn't just a bunch of details. Rather, it was an implementation plan. And guess what? It took us another 6 months before we could put in all of those emails, all of those steps, so that when someone joined 5000 BC, when they joined that membership site, they would feel comfortable, they would feel welcome, they would know what to do, they would have tiny little steps that they could take, and then not just join another membership site, but be part of the community, and in turn the community would rally around to help them settle in. That took a lot of time. Everything that you're making notes of is going to take you ages to implement. The problem is when you start reading or listening to something, you don't know what you're getting into. For instance, clients will buy a home study of the article writing course or the information products course, and almost instantly they will start making notes. And my advice to them is to treat it like knowledge, to go from one end to the other. In fact, to go from one end to the other at extremely high speed, so that you get to the end. The end is very important because it gives you that satisfaction of having completed something. And while you're zooming through that information, you can make little bookmarks. And those bookmarks will tell you where to go back. Those are the markers where your implementation is going to begin. In the article writing course, for instance, if you made some kind of bookmark at objections, you could probably implement that in a day, 2 days. If, on the other hand, you wanted to learn how to write the opening paragraph of an article, that might take you several weeks. Since each piece of implementation is not exactly the same, some pieces might take you weeks, months. Or if you just have to stand on your foot or put on your socks while standing on one foot, well, that just takes a few minutes. And despite the fact that I'm telling you not to make notes, sometimes it can just be a very fun activity. I will take my iPad and go to the cafe, or I'll take a diary and I have my fountain pen, and I'm listening to something. Maybe it's Michael Lewis talking about storytelling. I'm already very comfortable with storytelling, but I like what he's saying, and I make little sketches. I'll write down little anecdotes. And it's a fun way. It's almost entertainment. It's when you have to remember everything or feel that you have to remember everything that it becomes overwhelming. You and I, we're never going to catch up with all the information that's out there. In fact, if we go back to when your grandparents lived, and if they stepped into a library, there was way more information than they could cope with going back 70, 80 years ago. There's absolutely no point in continuing to say this information is overwhelming. All you have to do is implement. How do you implement? One of the three buckets. Is it knowledge? Is it entertainment? Or is it implementation? The first two buckets are really easy. The last one, well, it's only a very small slice of that pizza. Probably 5% or even 2%. But make sure that you do implement that small amount, and you will see that things start to move at a very steady pace as you go through your life and your business. That's it from me. I'll say bye for now. Bye-bye. If you're wondering what's happening in Psychotactics land, well, we're having a workshop in France, in Paris, in late October, and there's also a meetup in late November. It's only June when I'm recording this podcast, and there are just 8 seats left on the meetup, which surprised us all because usually most of the seats go later as we approach the date. But hey, we're not complaining. The meetup is a lot of fun. If you ever want to speak to somebody who's come to a meetup, or you want to read the testimonials, you will be shocked at how much fun we have on a meetup. It's supposed to be for 3 hours, but it goes for much longer. In fact, you should plan for much longer because often we'll go to lunch or we'll do some other activity, And we've been known to go for quite a while. Of course, you can leave whenever you choose. And while I don't know what happens at other meetups, this is one of the most fun, informative meetups that you can get to. Plus, it's the people. The people that show up to these meetups, they're absolutely adorable. They're friendly and kind, and yeah, you'll find out for yourself. And there's also a strategy session that we're having in late October, and it's just for 6 people. We're going to spend 3 days with your strategy, work out how you need to go forward, how you need to get rid of lots of this noise that you're hearing all around you. How do you know what to pick, what not to pick? You want to work hard, you're willing to work hard, but there is so much information as we have dealt with this episode, and it's really hard to know which direction to go in. So we'll come up with a strategy for you and for the 5 others that will join you. It's 3 days. It's good fun, but mostly it will give you precise direction. To know more about this, email me at Sean@Psychotactics or Renuka@Psychotactics.com. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. Bye for now. Still listening? I told you the story about Obladi Oblada. Well, that story is directly linked to me as well. When I was a kid, I was very ill and I almost died. I had been ill for a month and a half. The song that I sang on a consistent basis while in the hospital was Obladi Oblada. And so for me, it's not just information. It's a big part of my memory. I will tell you that story someday soon, and we'll learn from it as well. We'll learn how to construct a story so that people are listening to it or reading it, and they just can't pull themselves away from that story. How do you tell that gripping story? Well, we've had enough storytelling episodes for now, so we'll just keep that until later. But for now, Obladi, Oblada, life goes on, brah. La 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 la, life goes on. See you in 5000 BC. Bye-bye.